Hello, I'm Joshua of Milestone Play, and today we have a prop making video, specifically this prop, a 2-level dungeon map meant to be given to the players to help them fight their way through. We're going to look at how I physically made the map, and then we're going to look at a few design choices that influenced why it is the way it is. So, let's get going. To start off, I made a scrap paper mock-up to figure out how I should actually build the map. I knew I wanted the top layer to open up through the center to reveal the lower layer underneath. The tricky part was figuring out where the secondary fold lines should be. I used tape to temporarily hold the top pieces in place before coming back with glue. The edge of the glue would then show me where the secondary fold should be. Now that I had a mock-up of how it would come together, it was time to do it again with nicer paper. In this case, I'm using watercolor paper that I had already tea stained. Whenever I plan on tea staining a project, I like to do that first with the raw materials. That way I don't have to worry about anything I write on it later being all blurred up in the tea staining process. As I work on the physical construction, I know that I want a different binding method than just glue. The glue is functional, but I also want something that changes the aesthetic. I had a plan to stitch the pages together, but wasn't sure if it would work. Similar to the initial test run of the paper mock-up, I then went on to do a stitching test run. First, I just took a spare strip of paper and glued it together, that way it would be as similar to the project as I could make it for the test run. While that's drying, I would then move on to the twine that I wanted to bind the papers with. The twine tends to be a bit brittle and fray, so to help prevent both of those problems and to also help it stick to the paper, I did a paraffin wax coating. I simply pulled the string through the block of wax and then went back afterwards and used the warmth of my hand to rub it into the fibers. The final step before stitching was to poke holes in the glued paper. I'm preemptively pushing the holes through the paper so I don't have to try and do that with the large dull needle while I'm sewing. It just makes it easier. Once all the holes were punched, I could easily stitch through with the wax string and see how that worked out. It's a good thing that I recorded the trial round because there was an issue with the recording of the actual stitching of the map. So yeah, we're just gonna have to skip to the glued map being stitched up, and yeah, it worked out just fine. Now that the map base was constructed, it was time to draw the actual dungeon map onto it. I already had a design for the 2 levels of the dungeon map. While I could have been more precise by adding a grid to the prop or doing a negative image rubbing, I chose to just sketch it by hand. As long as I have a few key areas lined up, the rest of the map doesn't have to be 100% accurate to the plan. The map is mainly meant to help with relative positioning, so there's no need to really stress about it. After getting it all sketched out in pencil, I went back and inked it over with a brush pen. While I like the look of the rough pencil sketch, the darker lines will be more functional for a bunch of people looking at the map over a table. However cool I want the prop to be, it still has to serve its function to make the game easier to play as well as better. The hash marks surrounding the corridors and rooms also serves to make it easier to know if a given rectangle is supposed to be a room or just underground wall. I debated whether I wanted to label the map with the adventure title, but decided that doing so would be fun and allow for another Easter egg that I'll talk about later. I then added an inscription to the inside to provide a hint at a hidden secret of the dungeon that isn't required to complete the dungeon or the adventure, but it is there for an increased challenge for players that want it or need it. To add a bit more character to the map, I roughed it up both on and off camera. It is rare that I make a prop that is meant to be pristine. Folds, tears, creases, and split edges just add a little bit of history to a piece, even if they're not meant to be clues or plot hooks. Finding the inside a little bland still, I decided to add some simple art that hints at something deeper in the dungeon. If this map were meant for a longer campaign, I would love to add dozens of Easter eggs and sprinkle clues to a bunch of different planned puzzles in the style of Indiana Jones or Uncharted. One of the first things you may notice about this map is that it is overall extremely empty, and that's on purpose. This map is meant to help the players navigate their way through the dungeon in a bit more of a theater of the mind style game. That way we don't have to slowly sketch out the map as the players explore it. If we do need a specific room or hallway for a grid-based combat, we can always sketch something up on a big piece of paper or one of those dry erase mats, but until we need that, having something as simple as this will help us flow through the dungeon and keep everyone orientated as to where we are without having to stop every 10 seconds to sketch out more map. We have the key doors that I know I'm going to need, as well as the staircases down into the first floor of the dungeon, as well as from the first floor to the second floor. By not having a bunch of details on the map, I'm not cemented into what each of the rooms is. If I ever want to run this dungeon again, I don't have to have it be the exact same thing. That way it can be varied up if I want to change the story at all. You may also notice that the map is off-center. Both level 1 and level 2 of the dungeon have a central corridor that runs along the center seam, but not through it. Now there's function to this, that way we don't have to have the visual obscurement of that hallway being broken by the map physically, but it also hides a secret door. So if you look at the inscription that we have in the center, it says, "If you can see me, you will not see me. Once I am covered, my cover will be revealed." And if you go ahead and just cover that inscription once again, we do have this unmarked hallway, this covered hallway that leads to another chamber. Something else that gives this away that's a bit more of an Easter egg than anything that's meant to be a hint is if we go ahead and close up the entire map, we do have the label for this adventure just for the fun of it. However, once more, the only letter that is going to be broken by the center seam is the S. Now, if you look at a lot of Dungeon Master maps, any secret door within a map is going to be marked by placing an S through that section of wall. So, a little bit more of an Easter egg than something that the players are supposed to notice, but if they do see that broken S and think that there's something weird there, and they go looking and delving down, we do have this wonderful break line. The final thing to note might just be a little bit of the art I used to fill in a little bit more of the map, and this is going to be a reference to the big bad monster at the end of the dungeon, which is going to be a manticore. Not something that is necessarily needed for the map, I just felt I'd fill in some of the space. There's always this drive to want to put as many Easter eggs and clues all over the map as possible. However, I also know that this map is being made for a single one-shot with then possible reuse, and this one-shot's going to be for some newer players, so I don't want to bog them down with too much information. The more information you give to players with the prop, the more they go looking for those secret connections that may or may not be there, so I didn't want to give them too many things that might confuse them. But yeah, this is just a nice prop I made for an in-person game. If you think I should make more content like this, go ahead and leave a comment down below, that way I know it's something you want to see. Thanks for watching the video. It was made with the support of our patrons over on Patreon, where you can see behind-the-scenes content and the development of our own TTRPG systems. If you're looking to join a game, head on down to the description where we have a link to our Discord. You can join long-form campaigns, short mini-series for bite-sized narratives, or quick dips into systems you don't want a long-term commitment to. Or you can join our Tower of Taziok. Tower of Taziok is a 5th edition infinite dungeon with roguelite elements, legacy play, and downtime synchronous with the real world. After you form a house of patronage, every week that passes in your life, your character gets a week of downtime. Everything else you can check out milestoneplay.com. And yeah, thanks for watching. Let's get going.